The Next Chapter with Prim Siripipat is a production of iHeartRadio. Hey everybody, it's Prim. Welcome to The Next Chapter presented by Baron Davis and Slick Studios. So this week we are continuing our nationwide multi-city, multi-university series, Transparent Conversations, addressing student-athlete mental health and well-being. Yes, I'm traveling all over the country for this LG Transparent Conversation mini-series, bringing these conversations directly to schools and athletes and administrators and other community members to help address these important issues. So each panel will feature not only a different topic, but a different set of panelists who all bring just a unique perspective on this. So we're going to be talking about the stressors of the modern student-athlete experience, the consequences of those stressors, the role of support systems, and finally, life after the game ends. And we'll be making stops at just different cities and different schools to make sure this conversation is comprehensive. And we're going to be making stops at my alma mater, Duke University, and also Loyola Marymount University in Los Angeles. And this entire series is powered by LG Electronics USA. So LG is on a mission to make their tagline, "Life's good, more than just a saying." And with this series, we hope to spark powerful, transparent conversations. And conversations we hope will really make a difference, not only in and out of the classroom, but on and off the court and field as well. So last week, we were at my alma mater, Duke University, talking about the stressors of the modern student-athlete experience. And afterwards, we did a Q&A. So students and athletes in the audience could have the opportunity to just get involved in this conversation and ask some really important questions. So here I am on campus, just outside of Cameron Indoor Stadium, at Duke University alongside Nina King, the Vice President and Director of Athletics for Duke University, Dr. Sean Zeppelin, the Assistant Director of Athletics and Behavioral Health for Duke, and former Duke and NBA player Gerald Henderson Jr. So we're going to field some questions, and we do have some questions from some students and some members in the audience. Are you guys ready? Yes. All right. So the first one is, we talked about injury and taking time off from the sport to come back. And also if you needed to take a break from sport for your mental health. If you needed to take a break from sport for your mental health, do you feel you could do so in the same way? So basically, do you feel as though taking a mental health break is something that's feasible, doable, acceptable? Because we've been starting to see this with athletes at the collegiate level, professional level as well. And should it be treated the same way as the physical component?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see a lot of athletes these days actually taking like a total break from sports and not playing anymore. They retire from sports to focus on their mental health. And I think seeing that has really like raised the likelihood for more people to continue to do that. It's like they see these people doing it, so they're more comfortable and they feel more confident to do the same thing. And we've actually had like teammates in the past, and I've had friends on other teams who have done the same thing and taken a semester off. And everyone's actually like really, really supportive and is like, I'm so proud of you for doing that, because you just opened up the door for other people to feel like they can do that too. Like, and everyone is so supportive. And I just think seeing that support has made people feel a lot more comfortable to do that in more recent times. Mm-hmm. Now, I think Kat could probably speak on when she was on the team, because we actually didn't overlap. There was no like overlap between our times, but she could talk about the 5 years before when I was there. But I just feel like there's been such a growth even from my freshman year with that concept.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's this notion within athletics and within injury is with physical injuries you can see it. It's like they're definitely injured. I mean, I had some teammates who had stress fractures or like things that weren't able to be seen, but you could tell that they were in pain. It was also like, okay, yes, they need a break. But on the mental side, unless it was a concussion test where you could literally see where they were like failing to do things and their brain wasn't functioning, it was less so apparent if they were struggling, or like I don't know if believable is the right term, but like mental health it's invisible to people outside of who's struggling with it. And I think that there needs to be a change and a shift where there is a capability to take a mental break. Like, life is hard. Sports are hard. Things can get really hard at times. And I think that, in my opinion, where it starts is at, like, setting that tone in the culture and setting that with your teammates. And what Anna said, like, you know, someone saying, like, you've opened the door, right? Like, people not realizing that it's okay to say that you're not okay and to take a step back, because then when you come back, you're going to be better for it, right? Like, we take the time to heal our physical injuries. We take the time to do rehab and all of that, but we don't do that for our mental health. And I think that we're getting to a place, hopefully, where that is an option. But I know when I was in school, that wasn't really. I had one teammate who stepped away from the team because she wasn't sure if she was in love with the sport anymore, if it was something she wanted to do or didn't want to do, and she ultimately decided life without lacrosse was better, but that wasn't as much of a mental like health break.
Almost like a mental step away.
Yeah.
And I think this is hard for a lot of coaches to digest, because it means maybe not putting sport first. And for those who want their athletes to remain hungry, and maybe I'm just talking about the coaches that really don't care as much about the human behind the athlete. I think that means putting their livelihoods as a coach and their program in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And then there's the other side of it, talking about the invisible tattoos, as my mentor likes to call it, the invisible injuries. It's hard for people to really understand. It's like, well, what do you mean you're like hurting, but we don't have any x-rays, we don't have any tests to really show this. So I think, you know, my take on this, and Ethan, I'll be interested to hear your take as well. I think my take on this is twofold. I do think, and honestly, my answer will probably change. It's constantly changing because I'm trying to figure out where I stand on this as well. I definitely think that we need to get to a place where it's okay and acceptable for us to step away to address our mental health issues. And I think it is not okay for others who take advantage of that sometimes because it doesn't make it okay for people who are really suffering from a serious mental health issue. Because I think we do. It's kind of like, you know, like sick days for school or whatever. You're like, oh, you know, I feel like watching cartoons or something. You just kind of, and then for the people that really need it, then it becomes an issue. So I think there's that other side of it where somehow, I don't know what the answer is, but somehow there needs to be a sense of accountability or maybe a way to measure where, you know, so we make sure that the people that really need help can step away and take that break.
I also want to challenge, like, in between that, and I don't know the answer to this, but I'm like, is there a world we live in where mental health breaks aren't needed because there are boundaries and parameters in place to support people every single day? Because I do feel like mental health breaks come when you're at that breaking point. Like, is there a way to support student athletes where it's not like a full, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but it's rather a day, or it's rather one practice versus that? Like, how do we get those institutional like pillars of support where, you know, it's at the breaking point, but rather it's like, okay, like, it's every single day you feel supported. And I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree with that. And that's exactly what I was thinking. We actually on our team, like, have a mandatory, like, amount of days that we could take off for mental health if need be. Like, if we, like, text our coach and we're like, you know, we're really, really struggling and we need to take a break for, like, a day of mental health, they don't ask questions. They just say, yes, like, what are you going through? Can I help you? And again, I can only speak on my experiences. And there needs to be so much more work done in this category. But I really feel like our coaches have done a very good job showing support for us and, like, our needs for mental health. But I think, like I said before, the platform has been opened up by other people. But every time someone does it, it's like, oh my my gosh, like they're so strong. Look how awesome they are. But it's like this surprising thing that people are like, oh my gosh, like that to me is also like signifies that there's a problem. That it's so rare that people are like surprised and like so, you know, happy for these people to do that. I think it's great that people are happy and supportive, but it's also a bad sign that maybe people are surprised. But I think like we just need to have more of a culture of like believing and just hoping that people are good enough people to not abuse it. But then again, humans are humans, and people sometimes abuse great benefits that we have. And I think that can be a really, really big problem. But then once you put a measurable aspect to it, then it steers people away maybe from wanting to come forward.
Yeah.
Because then their thing is being measured against someone else's, and is it bad enough, like yes or no? You know, like that's when I think people kind of get into that category of measuring, which could be tough. But yeah, that was just my thoughts on that.
No, I mean, I think both of you guys you make really excellent points. And I think some companies, I'm just talking more, I was thinking when I asked that question or posed my opinion, I was thinking about work culture right now, because we're experiencing a lot of those things, and executives are, you know, people are sometimes abusing that, where it's like, well, you know, I don't want to come into work at the time that you designated. And so there becomes a really big issue of trying to balance, okay, these, you know, you need to come in at said time. And then we also need to create space. And some companies are actually, some progressive companies are actually having everybody you have like 10 mental health days. And, you know, my friend who works for Salesforce has a Friday who's like, it's my wellness Friday. And, you know, and he's like, and I think he has like 3 to 6 months of paternity leave or
Salesforce
something like that. Yeah. So there are some companies, in terms of what sports is doing, that's an entirely different conversation, right? Ethan, do you have any thoughts on this?
I really resonate with the idea that this shouldn't be necessarily like something that we have to rely on a safety net for. We shouldn't wait until people are at their breaking point. And we talk in suicide prevention sometimes that the end goal isn't that everyone in crisis has somewhere to turn. It's that no one ends up in crisis. So I really resonate with that idea that we should be building this in from the ground up. This should be foundational to how we structure the lives of student athletes and the expectations that are set on student athletes. I think there is something I want to challenge about that idea of taking advantage of these systems or these flexibilities. In that I think we really need to evaluate where is the inflexibility coming from in the first place. Like, is that just inflexible because that's the way it's always been done? Or is it inflexible because there's actually something we want to protect and care about? And there's something to be said in my mind about just how intense athletics are, right? Like, it takes time and practice and dedication to something that is hard, and it's not an easy thing to spend so much of your time doing in college. So some inflexibility is going to have to be there, right? The practice has to happen. But the ways, I think there needs to be inside of athletics and inside of the classroom and everything about the college experience, a reevaluation of why things have to be the way they are. Why are people needing these additional, days off for flexibility? What are the things that are driving them to that point?
Yeah, I mean, I think you all make excellent points about, just approaching this from a different perspective. Because this conversation extends beyond sport and also into organizational culture as well. Okay, last question, because we have held all of you hostage for so long. And the fact that my phone is about to die signifies that we've been here for a long time, and now the heater's coming on. We're probably all sweating a little bit. Y'all right over there? No. Okay, all right, last one. I'm going to choose this one. How do parents fit into the mental health conversation in terms of just mental health support system and just the general discussion?
Wow, that's a really, really good question. I feel like parents being educated on mental health is the most important thing. I feel like having education on how to help your child and support your child through these things, you don't have to heal your child, but like knowing where to turn and knowing what you can do to best support your children is so important. And I can like use my parents as an example. They have done such a great job with me, my siblings. When we're struggling, they immediately are like, let's go see like a therapist. But what do you want first? You know what I mean? It's like they have this like, okay, let's see a therapist, but they're like, wait, what can we do to help you? And I think asking that question is so important. Like, what can we do to help you? And if we don't know, then they resort to kind of, you know, ideas that they might have that can help us. And a lot of parents, I feel like there's this stigma around like seeing a therapist. Like it'll be like, oh, like, are you seeing a therapist? Like it's like, you know, this like whisper, like, you know, behind the curtains type of thing. But I feel like we've seen such a change in that, at least in my family. But again, that education is just so important, and really asking your child, like, what do they need? How can I help them? I think that's just like so important.
Agreed. I'm on the same page. Kat?
Yeah. I mean, parents set kind of the foundation for a child's life. Like, it's really crazy the impact two people can have on one lives, and it carries through that child's entire life, right? So when you think about that, it's supporting, but it's also having these conversations early. It's asking, you know, how are you feeling? Or like diving into if someone says, you know, I think I'm sad today. Well, what made you sad? Like, I think it's normalizing these conversations from such a young age and building an environment where your child feels safe throughout their childhood to come to you. Because if that trust is there, if that support is there, chances are, and this is just my opinion, like, they're going to be able to come to you before they hit that crisis. They're going to be able to say, hey, I'm feeling this way today. Is that normal? What does this feel like? Can you identify with this? Do you relate? And normalizing, like, I had a good relationship with my parents growing up to a certain extent, but I definitely saw them as like adults. Like, I didn't necessarily relate to things. And I think if they had been more open with their struggles, whether it was mental, like we had some financial issues that they didn't want to talk about openly, but like having these conversations earlier can really help. And then in that too, it builds out, right? Like, if I'm having these conversations at home, imagine the conversations I could have with my friends. If I'm like, hey, I talked about this with my parents, like, this is what we talked about, like, how are you feeling today? And I think that really sets the stage of support, is building that trust of like, you can come to me with anything. Like, I'm in your corner, I'm your cheerleader, and I'm also here to help you. Like, I'm trying to educate myself on this too. And like, that's, I think, evening the playing ground where like, yes, you are, and I'm not a parent, but like from like, you know, my relationship with my parents, like.
But you are a daughter.
I am a daughter.
You have some experience.
I am a daughter, so I do have some experience. But I think like my parents saying like, you know, they're the head of the house, but they can come down and meet me at where I'm at and bring me up to have how people, I think, you know, bunny ears, adult conversations, but real life conversations that like you don't need to hide your kids from because you think they're too young. Like, if your kid is coming to you with something that they're seeing, chances are they're not too young to talk about it. Like, you know, some things in high school I think that are happening, like, I would rather my mom have a conversation with me about things than a random stranger or like an internet threat, or you know what I mean? And I think that's where some of that comes into play once you build that trust.
Yeah. And if I could add one thing, and actually, like, Ethan, if I could talk to you about this too, especially with men's mental health and with young men, I feel like the most damaging phrase used to young men is, be a man, don't cry. Be a man, don't cry. And I will tell you, like, my brothers, I have 3 of them, they all cry. They all show emotion. They have all had a platform because of my parents to like show emotion, and like, it's okay to like be frustrated. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be sad and cry. Like, it's okay to be happy and cry. Like, all these emotions that are very raw, I feel like are so important for laying that foundation to everything, you know, Kat's speaking about, but especially with men's mental health, you know, especially in sports, you have like, be a man, don't cry. You know, don't talk about mental health because like, you need to be a man, like, just toughen up. And Ethan, I'm just curious about maybe any of your experiences within athletics or, you know, just as growing up, how you kind of feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to have incredible parents who had those conversations, right, and allowed me to be open about emotions. But absolutely, I think sports plays a major role in perpetuating the downplaying of men's emotions, or the kind of shoving it underground a little bit. I mean, there are absolutely tough moments that, and when you're in a space, you get so close to teammates, especially in, middle school, high school age sports like that. Those were my friend groups, right? And I think it was damaging to see a lot of my friends who were not able to have those conversations about tough emotions or didn't feel equipped to talk about what they were feeling and what they were going through. And I think a lot of times it comes down to the coach or other leaders and mentors in those people's lives. So you talked about the importance of parents educating themselves and being open with their children. I think it's just as important for coaches and any other mentors in young people's lives to become educated about mental health, to really strive to make those conversations happen, be open about their own struggles and their own emotions, and then invite that conversation from the students, the young people. Try to get more comfortable with having those conversations in a lot of different spaces. I think a lot of times the pressure on parents is you are the adult in that child's life. You're the person they should go to. But I think ultimately we want students, we want young people, whether they're in elementary school or they're in college or grad school, we want people to have trusted mentors, coaches, parents, leaders in their life who they feel supported by and open with and able to have those tough conversations. So if that's a parent, great. If that's a coach, amazing. But people who work with young people should really take it on themselves to do the hard work of becoming more educated about mental health and opening that conversation up.
Right, because the impact comes from parents, it comes from coaches, it comes from caregivers. Not everybody is in the typical traditional nuclear system of a mother and a father, right? Because all familial dynamics change. And so, for me, I think I agree with every single one of you. I think it begins with having that discussion, having that recognition, extending that responsibility out to everybody else. And for me, we're going through it. I have a son, 4-year-old son, Duke, shout out. He's going to UNC, the fact that we named him Duke. And a 15-month-old son, Tyson. But I think it really begins with, it's like, listen, if you as a parent, you have to be talking about emotions and feelings and having that conversation. If you haven't done that yet, if you don't know what emotions and feelings are, you don't know how emotions and feelings are a signal to you about your internal processes, that is the sign that you need to be educated. What goes back to your point, Anna, educating yourself about all of these psychological processes, because by doing that, you are then going to pay it forward and really have an impact. And you guys, all of you have paid it forward. You've sat here through a very, very long time. Anna's going to need more cough drops.
Don't worry, I got some in my pocket.
I know.
She's locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded.
Yeah, Target style. Those are the best cough drops ever.
Right.
But I can't, we can't thank you enough for coming here on the LG Transparent Conversations van and series to open yourselves up and be so vulnerable and just to engage in, what many believe is a difficult conversation. But I hope all of you had a good time. How did it feel to engage in this conversation for a very long time?
It was awesome. I mean, I think kudos to you and the crew for having it be such a welcoming environment where I feel really safe being vulnerable and being myself. So I'm so grateful that you had me on.
Yes, yeah. Prim, you and everyone at LG and everyone out there in the crowd.
In the cold.
Yes, I am so appreciative for, everything you guys have done. You have made this such a special process, such a fun process on top of that. And honestly, I feel very educated after this too, hearing about so many awesome perspectives that everyone in this van has. And I'm just so appreciative to be a part of something so amazing. And thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you, Ethan.
I love having these conversations, but even more so, I love meeting the people who enjoy having them too. So it's been an absolute pleasure to learn from and talk with all of you. And of course, a big thanks to LG and the team that worked so hard to put this together behind the scenes.
You are always welcome back. And I don't say that to a lot of Tar Heels, although I do have a lot of Tar Heel friends. But it's a cool thing, right, where we can kind of strip away the rivalry between the Blue Devils and the Tar Heels. But this is
actually my first time on Duke's campus.
Are you kidding me?
You'll have to walk around.
I know. I'll make a
the
tour of
chapel.
it. Yeah.
Go see the chapel.
Okay.
Seriously.
All right.
And
I
it's
will.
beautiful right now with the fall leaves.
You won't regret
Oh,
it, even
it's
as a Tar
gorgeous.
Heel.
You won't.
I really had to swallow my pride to make the drive down 15-501 this morning.
Yeah.
You didn't swallow too hard. You came in your Carolina blue. So you came representing. Well, Anna, Kat, Ethan, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for coming on and talking so much about this. And, that's always my goal, provide a safe, trusting environment to raise our voices and our message. And, as we move forward, I want all of you to reach out to me if you ever need help with something, mental health, vocational, career, anything, right? Because this is all about creating a community and really helping each other. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prim.
This is amazing.